Methods. Organizational behavior research methods. Organizational behavior researchers have many tools they use to discover how individuals, groups, and organizations behave. Researchers have working hypotheses based on their own observations, readings on the subject, and information from individuals within organizations. Based on these ideas, they set out to understand the relationships among different variables. There are a number of different research methods that researchers use, and we will discuss a few of them here. So, imagine that your manager has asked you to find out if setting goals will help to make the employees at your company more productive. We will cover the different ways you could use research methods to answer this question, to impress your boss, and hopefully even get a promotion. Surveys are one of the primary methods management researchers use to learn about organizational behavior. A basic survey involves asking individuals to respond to a number of questions. The questions can be either open-ended or close-ended. An example of an open-ended question that could be used to address your manager's question would be to ask employees how they feel about goal setting in relation to productivity, and then summarizing your findings. This might work if you have a small organization, but open-ended surveys can be time-consuming and hard to interpret at a glance. You could get more specific by asking employees a series of close-ended questions in which you supply the response key, such as a rating of 1 to 5. Today, it is easy to create online surveys that quickly compile the results automatically. There are often several free tools that you can even find online. Or, of course, you may use paper and pencil surveys. Researchers may even use a handheld device to randomly or systematically survey participants about key aspects of their day to get a more dynamic view. This is called time sampling. Now let's look at a sample survey about the effectiveness of goal setting. Instructions. We would like to gather your opinions about different aspects of work. Please answer the following 3 questions using the scale below. In the response scale, we see 1, strongly disagree, 2, disagree, 3, neither agree nor disagree, 4, agree, 5, strongly agree. Here are the questions. Setting goals at work helps me to focus. We have the options 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. The next question. Goal setting is effective in improving performance. You may answer 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Third question. I get more done when I use goal settings. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Regardless of the method you choose to collect your information, the next step is to look at the averages of responses to the questions and see how the responses stack up. But this still wouldn't really answer the question your boss asked, which is whether using goal settings would help employees be more effective on the job. To do this, you may want to conduct a field study. What is a field study? Field studies are also effective ways to learn about what is truly going on within organizations. There are survey field studies like the one above that we discussed, but more compelling evidence comes from field studies that employ an experimental design. Here, you would assign half of the employees at your company to the goal setting condition and the other half to the control group condition. The control group might not get any information on goal setting, but the treatment group would. If you found that the treatment group was more effective than the control group, you could probably tell your boss that goal setting works. There are also laboratory studies. Organizational behavior researchers are often interested in basic research questions such as, can we show that goal setting increases performance on a simple task? This is how research on goal setting started, and it is also how we can establish the conditions under which it works more or less effectively. Again, to address this, researchers may conduct a lab study in which one group is assigned to one condition and the other group is assigned to a control condition. Generally, the control condition involves no changes at all. You may have even been involved in a laboratory study during your time at university. One of the most important concepts to understand with lab studies is that they give researchers a great deal of control over the environment they are studying, but do so in a much less realistic way, since they are not studying real employees in real work settings. So, for example, in a lab study, a researcher could simulate hiring and firing employees to see if firing some employees affected the goal-setting behavior of the remaining employees. While this would not necessarily be legal or ethical to do in real organizations, it could be a compelling lab study. At the same time, however, firing someone in a laboratory setting does not necessarily carry the same consequences as it would in real life. Now we're going to talk about case studies. Case studies are an in-depth description or single industry or company. Case study writers typically employ a systematic approach to gathering data and explaining an event or situation in great detail. The benefits of case studies are that they provide rich information for drawing conclusions about the circumstances and people involved in the topic studied. The downside of case studies is that it is sometimes difficult to generalize what worked in a single situation at a single organization. Now let's turn to meta-analyses. A meta-analysis is a technique used by researchers to summarize what other researchers have found on a given topic. This analysis is based on taking observed correlations from multiple studies, weighing them by the number of observations in each study, and finding out overall if an effect holds or not. For example, what is the average relationship between job satisfaction and performance? Research shows that, looking across 300 studies, the relationship is moderately strong. This is useful information because for years, people had thought that the relationship did not exist. But when all of the studies to date were examined together, the original beliefs about the satisfaction-performance relationship deteriorated. The advantage of a meta-analysis is that it gives a more definitive answer to a question than a single study could. The downside is that meta-analysis is only possible if sufficient research has been done on the topic in question. Now let's consider some measurement issues in organizational behavioral research. Another important thing to understand here is the difference between reliability and validity. So imagine that you own a trucking company. A major component in trucking is managing the weight of different cargo. If you had a scale that gave you the same weight 3 times, we would say that it was a reliable scale. But if it turned out the weights given are in kilograms instead of pounds, it would not be a valid measure if you charge for delivery by the pound. Finally, much of management research addresses correlations between 2 concepts rather than actual causation. Correlations simply mean that 2 things co-vary. So, for example, it would be inaccurate to assume that because 99% of the people who died this year also drank water, that consuming water kills people. Yet many people claim their product caused a positive outcome, when in fact the data do not support their claim any more than this water example. This brings up something that confuses even seasoned researchers. When you have only one observation, it is called a datum. When you use the word data, it refers to multiple observations, so it is plural. Organizational behavior researchers test hypotheses using different methods, such as surveys, field studies, case studies, and meta-analyses. Reliability refers to consistency of the measurement, while validity refers to the underlying truth of the measurement. And it, of course, is important to recognize the difference between correlation and causation. This text is from Organizational Behavior by the University of Minnesota, and it is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike 4.0 international license, except where otherwise noted.